what I wanted to cover is a couple things real quick on what we call our chalk talk. So we've kind of moved up from the water bottles and the coasters on the table, so that may make more sense on the table after we do this. But so we've got a little field drawn up here, and I want to talk a little bit about bunt defense. So two things I want to cover today: bunt defense and slapper defense. Okay. So a common defense that I see when I'm out there coaching against coaches, and something that we're looking for is, how sure are you as far as how close you want to play your corners. So if we take the corners here, and oftentimes when we have a runner on first base, so the runner's here on top, the little white dot right there, there's the runner. Okay, black dots are the defensive players, all right? So we'll bring the second baseman over a little bit more because she's going to be covering second. So you got a runner on first, nobody out, one out, and we get a bunt defense. Okay, a lot of times what I will see from my dugout when we're on offense is I'll see the third baseman in, and I'll see the first baseman playing farther back than the third baseman. So first baseman tends to play a little closer to first pace. Maybe she normally plays here, and in bunt defense, she's going to play here. Okay? But for me, that leaves a lot of area in here that you can soften the bunt. And so how do you soften the bunt? You slide the hands up a little bit higher on the bunt so you deaden the ball. So you soften the bunt if you can kill the ball. So, you run into a little problem in here where if they deaden the bunt, you're going to have trouble even throwing somebody out at first. But how about this? How about they're going to bunt the ball really hard, and they're actually going to give you an opportunity to make a lead out at second base. But when your corners are so far back, then they really, even on a bunt that you could get the lead out at second base and really kind of neutralize the inning, they're playing too far back to get that out. So a couple things I want you to take a look at, okay? There are situations in my mind where we know the other team's going to play by the book. We feel pretty certain that they're going to bunt in this particular situation. And all defenses, here's my disclaimer, all defensive positioning is dependent on where you locate the pitch. So we can have all these great ideas on where to place everyone, but if we're not putting the pitch where we need to be put, the whole defense goes out. So we've got to hit the mark with the pitch, okay? So something I would say to look at is how to get lead outs in bunt situations. You take this corner of the rubber right here. All right, and the rubber sits between first and second, okay? So take this corner of the rubber and draw a straight line that bisects right here the baseline. And look at how much closer that is to the batter, okay? The best bunt defenses, what you will see, and oftentimes you'll see it from a third baseman. You'll see the third baseman playing in on that line, and this is relatively close. It might not look close in this diagram, but this is pretty much in the batter's face because she's almost halfway down the line. Right. You don't see a lot of third basemen play here. Even third basemen in what we call crash defenses will play a little softer. But that difference, that line right here, that puts you right there, allows you to get in on a hard bunt from a left-hander. We got a right-hander right now. Or the same with a first baseman. Come straight across, play that first baseman. Now, probably not the defense to run when you're up 5-1. And this other team needs more runs, so there's more likely that they might be swinging, trying to get more runners. But look at a 1-0 ball game in the 6th inning, and your pitcher's dealing, and it's more likely than not that the other team's going to bunt. Well, you come in with a backbreaker crash defense, get this close to the batter, throw that curveball to that right-handed batter, and you got 1 or 2 steps right there. You got a lead out right there, and we all know what that does to the inning. That really changes a momentum. Leadoff batter on, nobody out, everybody's excited. Now they just kind of pop the air out of the bubble a little bit. So that's something about what I call, again, bisecting this line right here for your crash defense. Now, if you're not sure if they're going to bunt or not, they may pull back, they may swing. Well, play it about in here, just a couple of steps back. So that way, if they hit, you're not giving up the 3-4 hole. You're not right in their face. You're not subjected if the pitcher does put a ball over the middle of the plate and it's going to get hit at somebody's face. So this is what I call a more typical defense. I caution all of you coaches out there against playing too soft. Okay, when you play too soft, number one is you're not getting lead outs. All right, you're not getting the lead outs that are really available to you. And number two is you're in danger of somebody bunting really soft on the ball, but you've got so much area to cover that you can't get that runner at first base either. It doesn't happen a lot, but that's a little bit on bunt defense. So, Doug, tell me what you do and what your bunt defenses look like.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we used to have plays for this as far as, and I love how you diagram bisecting the defense and what we would do in bunting situations, like in a game. Unfortunately, it's changed because softball in some ways has gotten more like baseball as far as, you know, not bunting when you think they would. But basically, one thing I tell our defense is never show where you're gonna finish until the last minute. So basically, you might have the shortstop over here, third baseman back here, first baseman back there, but in the time they got into their position.
Start them a little softer
And then bring
and
them
have them creeping in.
creeping in
Right.
and crash.
Because if we show too early,
Mhm.
a good creative third base coach will have them pull back and expose it. So don't show your defense too quick, right?
Exactly.
So you may start here and then maybe as the pitcher starts her windup,
Mhm.
you start to creep in another 2 steps and you've got that, you're bisecting the baseline.
Plus, if you're a third base coach, you're looking at the defense, and if they're setting up over here, you're gonna call for a bunt, or you're gonna call for something specific according to the defense you see. But what we would do basically on this type of situation, we'd almost throw a ball down the middle, and this is in situations where it's a close tie game or something like that, and several times we did this effectively, where we would have, at the point of, we'd be all the way, as soon as the girl's bat hit came out there in the butt, we'd be all the way down here. And the plan was to get the lead out at second base.
So you'd be actually inside that line and you're in this space
At the
in
point,
here.
yeah, once that person's, when the bat head is out and they're obvious bunting. Obviously, this is in some way, but I would say we had about a 90 to 10 chance when this thing worked. And we not only got the lead out, but on several occasions, we ended up turning that play into a double play.
Now this is a little imposing to the batter. So all of a sudden, when you've got 2 corners coming that much closer to the batter, they're walking that much closer, it tells that batter, you don't have much room for air right here where you place that ball. So, try that with your players. Have those corners stand back here by the base, then have those corners come up 2 steps, then have those corners come up inside that baseline, and stand there in the batter's box and look at how that presents itself. The whole defense is saying, we're ready for your bunt. And these are those situations, again, where it's not so much the perfect storm, but everything kind of lines up that that they're about to bunt. Throwing the ball down the middle against a team that is playing by the book, they're going to bunt the ball hard into your defense. Throwing the ball down to the middle to a creative coach, that allows that batter to kind of center and they can get a little bit more creative.
Exactly.
So, when you're, and the curveball is very common. So it's not like you have to have a 6'2" rise ball pitcher because that's the obvious, right? But I think what a lot of people don't understand is so many bat angles are brought back with the pitch this way. So even though the girl's trying to deaden it, she brings it back with the curveball going this way and she fouls the ball off or she bunts the ball right to the first baseman. So, I guess the pitching side of this is very basic. Most of you have a pitcher that has a curveball with decent control. Have that pitcher throw a curveball right here on the corner. If she puts it over the middle, a creative batter can do a little more with it, but if she hits the corner, she's either going to foul the ball off or she's going to bunt it right to this first baseman. And a lead out in a stress situation is, I call it a backbreaker. It's kind of like a pickoff, right? When you can pick off a runner or something like that.
And especially if you could, because the one thing that a lot of coaches have their batters do is they want them basically stand there till they get the bunt down, and then they're taking off.
Right.
By the time that happens, it's a bang bang play. It's worked on us on a number of occasions.
Sure, yeah. Well, staying home in the box is something that we will actually work on because in a sacrifice situation, there's so many times when this runner's starting to run to first base and the ball goes down and it comes up and either hits her in the box for a foul ball or hits her out of the box for an out. We'll get the boxes in here at some point. And so, but it'll give them a little bit more. I think if I'm playing against that offense, I know that I got maybe a little stronger chance to turn a double play too if I can get that ball to second base a little bit quicker. So again, regular first baseman back here, not ready for anything. Typical bunt defense right about here. This positioning right here, I remember the first time I saw the Japanese national team, it was just an intimidating style that they were just right in, and they're taking bunts in here and getting lead outs, and it was just amazing. And if you can create that kind of confidence and certainty in championship play, you're going to put some pressure on some teams. Okay, let's go to slapper defense. I'm going to start with you on this one. So you're on defense, you've got a slapper up. And so let's talk a little bit about where you place your shortstop here, where you place your third baseman. Go ahead and move the magnets.
Okay, again, this is going to be dependent sometime on where the ball's being pitched.
So let's start with the most common location, which is outside the screwball.
Outside.
We're throwing the screwball to the lefty.
Okay, so basically, runner on first base. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have this girl back here and then moving up. But right now,
How far off the line with the third baseman? A little more off the line than usual, or?
Yeah, a little bit more off the line because they want to make sure one thing one of the most common mistakes for a lefty batter is the angle of the bat. And so most of the time they're gonna foul it. So they're gonna do everything they can to bunt the ball. Our rule when we were bunting is I wanted to try to bunt the ball toward the pitcher. That way you get the barrel out of it.
Right,
sooner.
right.
So the second baseman would be cheating
That's a good
over
point.
here. This one, the first baseman would start here and then they would go back. This was with a runner on first base.
Right.
And typically, this would be here. The hole in the defense is right there. So unfortunately, with the college rules right now, that's making that a little bit more difficult to make adjustments on that. But
To get around the outside pitch,
exactly.
to get around the outside pitch and dump it here, right?
Exactly, especially when you can't put your foot on that line. So you're gonna have to change the angle of your foot a little bit from about a 45-degree angle to more of almost a 180.
So let's start with that. Let's say the most basic knowledge that a coach needs is in this particular defense, and again, your pitcher has to locate the ball. Okay, as soon as your pitcher doesn't locate the ball, puts the ball over the middle of the plate, that allows the lefty to use the whole field. And even though in theory the lefties try to put the ball farthest away from first base, they also need to hit it into holes. So if you're locating pitches over the middle of the plate, it kind of negates this defense. You know, you've got a pitcher that's really scraping that edge, maybe even getting the river pitch. Now it makes sense to move her a little bit more there because
Right.
she really can't put the ball fair. As Coach Doug was saying, it's really hard to get around that pitch. What you need to know is throw outside in this defense. A lot of coaches I see use this defense. They see the defense is very commonly used, but you're not throwing all outside pitches. If you throw a changeup or a curveball or something inside of this batter with less than 2 strikes and that batter squares the bunt, you have now exposed this. But you're saying, hey, Coach Tony, I'm gonna have my pitcher cover. Okay, do me a favor. In 1 year's time, tell me how many times you see a pitcher come over here, not a bunt here, to the edge of the circle, but get right here and be able to throw somebody out. And as Coach Doug just said, you know, a lot of angles for left-handed bunts, they're not far enough outside or inside in front of their body,
Right.
so they're not angling enough, so they tend to foul away that outside pitch a little bit. But if you got the proper angle with your bunt and they throw you inside, boy, have you exposed
That's
there.
great.
So let's turn it around to offensively. You know, we're on offense and we see the defense that the other team is lining up with. Don't automatically assume that unless you're playing one of the best coaches with a reputation and you know this, that they're gonna throw everything outside. You would be amazed at how many times we get a curveball or a changeup in this particular defensive setup with less than 2 outs or less than 2 strikes. So again, that bunt option with less than 2 strikes really opens this option up. So what we're watching is on offense, we're looking at their pitch calling.
Exactly.
And if everything's outside, now we know we can't bunt, but it also tells us we can really get close to that line and we can really start to predict where every pitch is gonna be, so you concentrate on just getting the bat on the ball.
You know, the Cruisers that you beat 2 years ago in the national championship, that team basically got as far as they did, in my opinion, is because they played these overshifted defenses. And for most of the part, all the way up until you guys exposed them, you know, they were successful at doing those type of things. I mean, we tried time and again and we found ourselves, you know, trying to do something with that outside pitch that we couldn't do, and we'd end up popping the ball up or grounding the ball right back to the pitcher or something like that. So
When you control the location of the pitch, you control most of the outcome of the contact. Most of the batters are going to hit the ball the way you would expect them to hit it when you are pinpointing the location. Location over the amount of pitches, location over how fast it's going. Yes, obviously speed helps, spin rate helps, but location allows us to predict. Now, I've got a couple of these trophies on the wall. This guy's got trophies all over the place, and so that's where the opinion, I want you to really understand the opinion that everybody's getting here, because this might sound a little contradictory to some of the advice that you're getting or that you give or that you use, but understand the reference, and especially with the type of experience that Coach Doug has here.
one of the things I was gonna say is I do only lessons with lefties, and at least 5-10 minutes of every lesson I work on bunting the ball towards first base. That's how important I think it is. I know University of Tennessee, all they let their slappers do is bounce that way. Now I'm realistic in the standpoint that realize that it's very difficult at some point, but it can really do some great things for your team if you are able to
I
consistently.
mean, the
play
difference
ball
of being
down.
able to get the bunt here is, again, left-handed batter,
Mhm.
bringing the bat in front of her body and angling, and not stepping forward and having the bat back here. So that's really, and that's, again, through discipline, repetition, doing that over and over and over, presenting the bat out in front early. I always think of Autumn Champion, and at Foothill and then over at Arizona, and she was just, it was almost like you knew she was waiting for one inside pitch the whole at bat so she could just drop that bunt. She beat more people on that bunt.
I love that.
And defensively, work on some drills. First base is traditionally a position where people think, you don't need athleticism, or you put your less athletic type players. This is so important that first baseman can play as close as possible to come in here and wheel. Camuso from Oregon this weekend made a great play. So UCLA had a runner on third. Kenzie Washington played for Corona Angels, drops a beautiful bunt here. This first baseman comes in, gets the ball inside the circle here, barely throws Washington out at first. And then Lauren Linville, bang, bang, the runner on third tries to score. She puts a perfect throw and a double play, and it was outstanding. And why? If any of you saw that play, it all happened.
So she came all the way from second back.
Yeah. So work on your first baseman. Here's a challenge for them. Play them nice and close, not perpendicular to the baseline, maybe a couple steps back, and then they bunt. They've got to get the ball here. They slap. They've got to get back. And that footwork that they need, you need to do it over and over and over again so that they are used to being able to change direction. Let's take the runner off at first base. Again, we'll put a lefty up.
Well, can I add just one thing?
Yeah.
One of the things too I work on in my lessons, I really work a lot of footwork with my lefties when they're bunting. A lot of people just want to kind of basically get around the ball, is what I call it. So you're in the pop, when the position of when you're bunting is basically, you can create an inside pitch by getting your hips around the ball.
Do it towards the camera.
Okay, so basically, my lefties start with, you can't see my feet, but my left foot's closer to the white line than the back. Okay, what I'm gonna do on an outside pitch, if I'm more toward the middle, is basically gonna drop step, get the hips around, and making sure at the point of contact, I've got everything pointed down the first baseline like that. So again, I try to get the barrel of the bat. In my opinion, in slapping, you gotta control the knob. In bunting, you gotta control the barrel. And so at the point of contact, my left foot is in front of the right, my top hand, the weight of the bat is here, so I gotta be able to control this weight by getting the barrel of the bat out there.
And the problem is, go ahead and get your stance again.
Okay.
The problem is when lefties are coming back to your stance, when lefties are taking that step, too many of them will take that step, go and take the step, but the bat doesn't go with them.
Yeah,
So then that bat sits back here, you got the screwball coming, and boom, you've got a foul ball. We know how third base coaches love that foul ball in a bunt situation. Or you've got that bunt right to the third baseman playing in, she gets that lead out. So you get that angle around, and that comes first. I mean, that has to get there, immediately before the body does. So that's a really good point. That's an extra little tidbit for you out there. So we're gonna take the runner off at first. And same type of thing now. What type of defenses do we see when there's nobody on base? Is it the first baseman playing in? We see this all the time. Bring the second baseman in, leave the first baseman back. Okay, so in one sense, to me, it makes sense. You create a pitch sequence that they're slapping the ball into the second baseman, looking at for lefties that don't slide the hand up the bat as much. So to deaden the ball is really sliding your hand up to deaden the ball. Let's say they're farther down here, so they're gonna bunt the ball a little bit harder. Same with right-handed, they're gonna push it harder versus deadening it back here. So that's where this one kind of works for me. I always love the challenge though, is seeing if we can deaden a ball in here with a left-hander.
Right.
Be able to deaden it because again, count in 1 year's time, and go ahead and send your answers back to me in 1 year, how many times you see a second baseman come here. Not this one, not the hard bunt, not the slap at her, but even a second baseman, it is really, really hard for them to come in here. So again, even with this particular defense, I'm looking for that other team to see what, are they gonna stay away from us, have us hit it into their left side coverage, or are they gonna give me an opportunity, something from the middle of the plate in to work that bat angle that Coach Doug talked about so we can drop a bunt somewhere in the side and again, expose this. This communication between the second baseman and first baseman, all the time creates problems. So it's kind of like the fake bunt steal that we'll talk about in another segment with third baseman and shortstop. So if they don't work on this communication, you know, you've got the second baseman here, first baseman up, and you even got a slap in here, and she doesn't know where her coverage stops. You create a lot of problems. Now, why is this important? Because small game, coming into championship play, coming in summertime now, not a lot of showcase tournaments, but bracket play, qualifiers, different things like this. You can have your way with pitchers that are struggling, and you can do anything you want at the plate. But all of a sudden, you come up against one of the best coaches, pitch callers, pitchers, and all of a sudden your options aren't so many because they're not putting the ball over the plate. They're creating more of the outcome. Your lefties now put pressure on the defense and force these defensive players to transfer the ball and get the ball to first base in, let's say, around 3 seconds. And that type of pressure is what we want to create. We really want to balance out our offense between lefty pressure and then players that swing away that are really disciplined in knowing the strike zone. So in the end, we want the other team to have to work batter after batter after batter after batter. And if they sit us down and they go through the game and they beat us afterwards, we know they had to work for it. We shake their hand, we tell them great job, because that's all we're really trying to do is we're trying to create this chess match out here. And we get consumed competitively with whether we win or not. And we get consumed with, you know, and how we react and, oh, we lost that. But if you really concentrate on the harder, most difficult thing, and that is how your teams are playing the game, then I'll tell you this, champions are built before the championship game. There are champions that have won championship games that they're actually not champions because they worry too much and they don't carry themselves with the confidence of champions. You can all be champions. You can all carry yourself like a team that expects to do the right thing. Take ownership when you make mistakes, it is what it is. You learn from it. You don't harbor over it because, again, it tends to put too much pressure on these players afterwards. Aggressive mistakes are always better than passive mistakes. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree.
You know, that way they're not afraid to make a mistake. So let's say they got a shortstop, you know, throwing the ball to first base. We tell them, I'd rather have you launch it 12 feet over her head, throwing the ball hard, than throw it in the dirt because you're worrying about where it's going. So
this is another thing too, on this type of defense, when you just had right here, if there is a runner on first base, okay, let's say it's up there, you get a chopper to the shortstop, you beat it out. There's no coverage at second at all. So basically, offensively, you got a free base there, unless you're going to have the center fielder rush in and cover that, and that doesn't always work.
Makes sense. So, almost went down in that chair right there. I think that's going to be a nice little blooper right there. My goodness. So that's a little bit on just basic sacrifice bunt defense and slapper defense, and we'll pick a couple more topics next time. And I'm just really proud our board held up, and the chair almost did it, and Doug held up, and I held up, and we'll see you guys next time.